have to look at the 2023 polls and with INEC. You know, so much was promised before now. And you know that the INEC timetable usually comes a year before the general election. It was up sometime in February 2022, of course, announcing what we would be expecting in 2023. And it's history today, but we continue to look at it, analyze it, where there are gray areas, how to bridge those gaps so that you know, election will never stop. Even as we speak, about 2 or 3 elections, off-cycle election, will be conducted this year. It is very important we have experts look at this with a view of ensuring that those gaps are closed and never occurred. And we have with us in the studio the former INEC Director, Voter Education and Publicity, Barrister Oluwole Osaze Uzi. A very good morning to you, and you're welcome.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
It's been a while.
It has been. It has been.
All right. So but let's just start by looking at your assessment of the 2023 election vis-a-vis what INEC promised and what they eventually served Nigerians.
Thank you for having me. Well, it's not usual to have a timetable or to announce the schedule of elections 1 year ahead. This is the first time it's actually happening. And that was made possible by virtue of the amendments to the Electoral Act. So there was a lot of time for preparations this time around. INEC had made several proposals to the National Assembly, most of which were accepted. And one of those accepted was this issue of early preparations, early release of funds, early timetable for the elections. And pursuant to the Act, you're right, in February 2022, INEC told us that there will be elections in February 2023. In fact, they had to adjust it 2 weeks ahead back because of the by the time the Electoral Act was passed, it was less than 360 days from the original date that was scheduled. So that was done. Expectations were quite high. The amendments ensured that increased use of technology in the process, especially with the accreditation of voters and the transmission of results. So expectations were high. And in the off-cycle elections of Edo, Ondo, Ekiti, and Osun, we saw the increased use of technology, especially in terms of the IREF. So those at home could easily look at their results, not just the physical viewing of the results in the polling unit, but they could also view them online from anywhere in the world. So that led to a lot of excitement, a lot of expectations were high. And with the recall that in 2015, there was the issue of card reader and its effects and everything else. Now, the issue was that the card reader was recognized in the INEC regulations. It was not recognized in the Electoral Act, and that's why the Supreme Court said, no, it cannot be superior. Regulations are not superior to the Act. So since the manual ticking of the register was the mode of accreditation spelled out in the Electoral Act, it had to be. So that was amended. So expectations were high. I think the young people, a lot of young people went to register, were interested in it for the first time because they believed in the process, they believed in the assurances, they believed in everything that was promised them. Now,
you know, the issue of funding is an important part of the entire process.
Yes.
And we believe that INEC, you know, looking at what role they play statutorily, the government give them what they want as at the time they want it. And going by what the Constitution says, 2022 Electoral Act, you must release their money a year before the elections. So much was released. And it appears that in some quarters, you give out too much and they didn't actually use it to what it should be used for. You know, that's what it's in some quarters. What do you make of that?
I don't think that's factual. I've never even heard it. Actually, I'm hearing it for the first time, but that's not factual anyway. Because INEC did not get all it's requested. No ministry, no extra ministerial body gets as much as it requested. I know in the annual budget, for example, there's been a ceiling of about 45 billion, and that's been so for several years, quite a number of years. So, and it's well short of what is actually required. But there is an election budget, and I think most of what was considered necessary in the election budget was approved, was appropriated, and funds released. You can never get enough. I don't know about the misapplication. I'm not aware of that one. I think if anybody makes an assertion, they should back it with some empirical evidence. I think I don't think that's correct.
You know, Barrister, most times these things happen when the ad hoc staff complain of not being paid.
This time around? No, that was not the case.
During the presidential election, after that election, they were not paid. In fact, some of us covered the governorship election in Kano State, and when we were there in this particular award, the ad hoc staff, core members, were practically on strike, that they would not be part of it. And we kept on asking what the problem was. They said they didn't pay them in the just concluded presidential election. And so we were worried. Despite all they got, like you said, there's budget for election, and that amount requested was released. What happened?
You're asking me. I don't work for INEC. I left INEC 3 years ago. I think as a journalist, an investigative journalist, I think you should have found that out. So I can't answer that. I'm not even aware. I'm hearing it for the first time. But you have to ascertain certain basic things, and that's the beauty of your profession. You must hear from the other side. And the same thing with the legal profession. You must hear from the other side before you make past judgment. Now, if people are complaining, and I've heard that in the past, some people complain, but for example, some of them were not the ones who actually worked, or they had incorrect bank details, or the bank details supplied, furnished to the commission, did not tally with the list of ad hoc staff who actually did the work. If you bring back details, either you endorsed your account number wrongly, then of course the money is not going to come to you. You have to go and sort that out. So there are all sorts of issues and reasons, but I'm not aware that funds meant for ad hoc personnel was diverted or utilized in any other manner. But then again, I'm sure if you had asked the Resident Electoral Commission of Kano or the INEC staff in Kano, they probably would have had some kind of explanation for that.
All right, so let's get to Benin. Wilson.
Oluwole, he's been speaking.
Hello, Wilson.
Much. I can hear you loud and clear. I can hear you loud and clear. Well, this question is for a barrister Oluwole. He said he left INEC 3 years ago. If we want to read the performance of INEC, we'll talk about the election. Some of the opinion that Nigerians' hope was dashed because of the performance of the empire. What's your view on this?
And even mainstream media about complaints about the performance of INEC. But in doing that, you have to look at the different sectors and you have to analyze what actually happened. Were the hopes dashed? I'm sure some people's expectations were not met. I'm sure some hopes were dashed in certain regards. In terms of logistics deployment, for example, in quite a number of places, the polls commenced later than the advertised time of 8:30 in the morning. So that in many centers, that were polling units, it didn't commence on time. So rightly, expectations were high that you promised that polls would open at a certain time, they should be open at that time. There was the issue of accreditation. I think the Beavers, I don't think anybody's expectations were dashed in that regard. The Beavers worked extremely well. I'm not.
Well, in some situations, reports we have, the Beavers didn't work. They had issues with Beavers. Not one unit, not two units, several units. They have issues with it.
It certainly was not widespread. And I deal with statistics, and I deal with observer reports and things like that. And I also look at the official statistics as well. It certainly was not widespread. That's why it's Beavers. That's why it's bimodal. For those, I voted in the second election, for example. It did not take my fingerprints. I had biometrics. Two of the biometrics were used. Either use your fingerprints or use your facial recognition. For me, the fingerprints did not work. But for the facial recognition, it actually did work. I think it got as high as 90-something% in terms of accreditation. So that, by any stretch of the imagination, was a successful thing. So that was there. I think the major challenge where people have issues more than anything else was the issue of the transmission, electronic transmission of results. For whatever reason, INEC said they had glitches, but the results were not transmitted as was assured, as was promised. I think that really is the major thing that you could hold the commission responsible. Things like voter suppression and violence, as we saw in some states, that is not within the remit of INEC. That is within the remit of the statutory bodies charged with that responsibility, which are the security agencies. So I think we should look at each segment and then assess basically on those ones. So in terms of transmission of results, I think INEC did not perform as well as it should have and as it promised Nigerians. And as a result of that, a lot of people lost faith, especially as we have seen that in some states, in some areas, the results were manipulated before being uploaded onto the IRF portal for the world to see. So that, in terms of logistics displays, those were two critical areas I thought the Commission did not do well.
Now, you talked about
election
manipulation
itself was an amazing thing.
Hold on, Barrister. You talked about manipulation of
I hadn't landed with the answers, but then again, yeah, I'll hold on.
Yeah,
yes.
From which angle manipulation of results? Because people have been talking about it. We have one form of manipulation or the other, one form of foul play or the other. From which angle? Because you said you deal on statistics or deal with statistics in terms of performance of INEC. And right now, you just told us that, yes, some results were manipulated. It's not the fault of the electoral umpire.
I did not say that is not the fault. I never said that. You must have misheard me. I didn't say that. I said confidence was lowered because of the fact that there was no transmission and that some alteration, it will appear that in some cases, some results were altered before they were uploaded. That's the issue of transmission of results and uploading of results and publishing of results is the responsibility of the Commission, and the Commission should be held responsible for that, for how well, I don't know what happened, but investigation will unravel that. I don't know how it happened. But I also don't know how widespread that is. The matter is in the tribunal, Court of Appeal sitting as Presidential Election Tribunal. I'm sure they will unravel some of these things. This is some of the evidence that we'll wait to see how widespread that was, how many units is affected. There are 176,000 odd units. I think the elections were conducted in 176, 606 or thereabouts odd units that it was conducted in. So we don't know whether it was in 1,000 units, whether it was in 100,000 units. Unfortunately, neither mainstream media nor social media has been able to give us any report on that. But the very fact that one or two were affected is bad enough. But how widespread that is, we'll just have to wait so that when you test this in the terms of tribunal and the court of law, cross-examination, the representation of evidence, then the court can decide how widespread that is and the impact it has on the election.
All right, now, you cannot talk about the election without citing an instance of that Damawa debacle. Yes, still from the same INEC, we have the state reg announcing the results. All of a sudden, you have on Thursday, yes, in Abuja, another result also was announced. What do you think led to this debacle?
I think we should get the facts right. No result was announced in Abuja. None. Both results, as it were announced in where it was supposed to be announced in Adamawa. What happened was that, as I understand it, the collation officer who also acts as the returning officer, was appointed, and he commenced his work. On Saturday night, he adjourned proceedings, probably because not all results were in. He adjourned proceedings till 11 a.m. on the Sunday morning. But the resident electoral commissioner, who has delegated authority of the commission to act, but not as a returning officer. A returning officer was also appointed by the commission. The resident electoral commissioner superintends the election generally within the state. He had no authority to act as a returning officer. Returning officers are appointed by the commission. And the Electoral Act says that, look, the decisions of the electoral officers in certain regards are final and cannot be questioned except within 7 days overturned by the commission or by a tribunal properly constituted. In this particular case, for whatever reasons which we do not fully understand yet, the resident electoral commissioner went ahead and pulled the reopening of the collation center ahead of time. So he went there at 9 a.m. and proceeded to announce what he called was the results. Now, that is not his duty. That is not his responsibility. The law does not give him power to do so. The law gives the commission the power to appoint a returning officer. The commission did appoint a returning officer. And there's a process also for the announcements of results and declaration of a winner. In this particular case, from what I saw on television, he did not, the resident electoral commissioner, who had no authority in the first place, did not enter the scores into the relevant forms as prescribed by the law and by the commission. He went there, used a piece of paper, and you're not allowed to use piece of paper. You're allowed to, you're permitted, and you're only supposed to use the prescribed forms. He did not use those forms, and then proceeded to announce a result. Now, when the commission heard of this, it was outraged. It said, no, this is not in accordance with the process. Let us find out what happened. So it summoned the returning officer, summoned the resident electoral commissioner and all relevant people to Abuja. And on Monday morning, they met, and I think hearing from them, the commission said to go back and continue the process, and rescinded what the resident electoral commissioner did, because it was void ab initio. It was not correct. It shouldn't have been announced by the resident electoral commissioner. He had no authority. In a sense, he usurped, I think that's the word the commissioner in the statement used, he usurped the powers of the resident electoral commissioner.
So what do you think is behind his action?
The resident electoral commissioner usurped the powers of the returning officer. So that was rescinded as it was voided, and the returning officer, who had the authority to do so, now proceeded, did a proper collation, entered the results in necessary forms, and made a return. And that was exactly what happened. And that is what I think is illegal, in accordance with the law and the regulations prescribed by INEC.
But what do you think is behind the action of the resident electoral commissioner?
I wouldn't know, and I wouldn't want to hazard a guess. You are taking me to the realm of speculation. If the commission knows, it hasn't published it, but I know that he's been declared he's wanted. The report has been made to the appointing authority, who have disciplinary powers over him, and I know that the president, from the news media, has ordered that he be investigated, just like the commission reported and recommended. So the president, using his powers under the law, has said, look, he should be investigated, and thereafter, if he's found wanting, to announce a result when you're not authorized to is a criminal offense under Section 120, subsection 4 of the Electoral Act. So he may have, if he knowingly did that, he may have committed an offense, in which case he can be charged to court without prejudice to administrative disciplinary measures that can be taken against him. He can only be removed or disciplined by the appointing authority. And the appointing authority is the president, and he can only act if he is addressed, if it's an address by 2/3 of the members of the Senate addressed to the president, then he can take action by removing him. But we await what will happen.
All right, Kadri, over to you.
All right, just to add to what you have said, Wilson, the response of the president is somehow putting INEC in a position that appears that they don't know what they are doing. When the president said, no, it's your job. I can't be a micromanager. Go and deal with it. This is your employee. So what do you make of that?
Well, let's get it right. INEC has no disciplinary powers over any resident electoral commissioner. It does not have. The law is quite specific. There's a lacuna of sorts, because it doesn't really mention discipline, but it mentions removal. And the removal can only be done when 2/3 of the senators make an address to the president. And because of the inability of the resident electoral commissioner or national commissioner to discharge his functions, his duties, by reason of ill health or any reason whatsoever, or is guilty of some kind of malpractice, in which case it can be removed if that process and procedure is followed. INEC did not appoint the resident electoral commissioner, although the Electoral Act says the REC is answerable to the commission. It is silent about his discipline. In fact, and it only talks about his removal by the president. So the only thing INEC could do was say, look, yours is a delegated authority. We have withdrawn that delegated authority. So you may be, yeah, a resident electoral commissioner, all right, because you're appointed by the president pending when he does what he wants to do, but we will not give you any authority, we will not give you any responsibility, we will not give you any role to play. We name you a resident electoral commissioner, but you're not acting as a commissioner of the commission because of this untoward thing that has happened, not the character, but this particular thing you have done. And what we can do is report it with the date, wrote to the president through the secretary to the government of the federation and say, see what it is. And now the president has actually acted on that in terms of at least the investigation, because you should carry out an investigation. I think Wilson was asking me just now that what made him do what he did. I don't know. I cannot fathom that. He alone can answer that. Even if the return officer was not available, even if he had said he was not available, then he would tell the commission, the appointing authority of the returning officer, and then there's a process and a procedure. Then another person, the protocol is another person probably would have been appointed to conclude what he had to do. Not necessarily the resident electoral commission, but any other returning officer could have been appointed. But he did not do that. Instead, he usurped those powers. I don't know why he did what he did. I understand he's a lawyer, so he should know better. And maybe when investigations are concluded, part of the findings will be made known to the public so we can get a better understanding of what went down.
Yeah, but Barrister, do you think relevant section of the Constitution or the Electoral Act can be amended to empower INEC to deal with any erring staff, like in the case of Ari? Now, INEC hands tight, and if not for some of this explanation, people just believe that INEC, it is your duty, the man is working on that, you deal with him.
Yes, but you see, this is where you and I come in. This has been the position for over 23 years. That has been the law. That has been the law. That is still the law. So enlightened education and the media has a role to play in this. You not only you enlighten people, you educate people as well, and you use those who are knowledgeable in the field to educate all of us on the varied aspects of everything else. And anybody can pick up the Electoral Act. Anybody can pick up the Constitution, hard copy or online, and read these things for themselves. Sometimes they might be in technical language, which might be difficult to understand, and you might need the professional to break it down for you. But like this, is quite straightforward. But again, it's not so popular, so that's why we're on programs such as this to enlighten people. But you also know there's a general feeling that he who has power to hire has power to fire. INEC does not hire. And why you use word staff, a resident electoral commission is not a staff of the commission. The Constitution, the Electoral Act, gives INEC power to appoint staff and to discipline its staff. But the commissioner is not a staff. It's an official. It's the commissioner of the commission appointed by the president, but not a staff. So that's the distinction. If all staff, if, for example, any staff is complicit in this whole affair, either by means of advice or anything that the staff could have done, that staff will be disciplined by the commission, but not a resident electoral commissioner, not a national commissioner, not the chairman of the commission. They are not staff. So that's the difference, really.
This is very interesting and clear. Okay, but moving on, there are so many gaps that we actually saw in the 2023 general elections. Like you rightly mentioned, delay in deployment of materials, delay in commencement. I actually saw some of them. Even the Adamawa one is an issue. And then, how can we, close these gaps going forward?
With a great deal of difficulty, unfortunately. It's been a perennial, logistics deployment has been almost perennial. INEC has tried different methods. I wish I had the answer, but we must carry out that conversation around that. First of all, I guess there has to be some kind of independent inquiry. I don't know that people will trust the commission itself to carry out an inquiry. What went wrong? There's an agreement, an MOU with the various unions and owners in the transportation industry and maritime and road transportation. I wonder what went wrong. I don't know. But from my feelers that I got, some reneged on the MOU, some reneged on their promise they were given for advance, and some now started renegotiating and said, look, sorry, if you give me 5,000, that's not enough. I want 20,000. Now that's blackmail. That's extremely difficult. And if they're not
sign an MOU. And also
an MOU was signed. That wasn't the issue. The MOU was signed with the road transport workers, with the road transport employers, and about 3 or 4, not just trade unions, but bodies of professionals are involved in the transport industry. Several MOUs were entered into between the INEC and these bodies. But somehow, the contract really is between you and the individual owners of those vehicles. And if an owner comes that day, sometimes in the past you hear in waterside, in boats where, I know maritime, I know that for sure, even on land, you get people now, the politicians buy up all the boats, even though they have entered into agreements with them, they buy up all the boats. What can you do? It's a commercial transaction, it's okay, I'm prepared to refund your money. Maybe somebody has given you 10,000, you are offering 5,000, but he doesn't tell you until that very time. So there's a problem there. It's a serious problem. We really have to look at it. And some people say perhaps we should think of better enforcement, and maybe there should be a law. If you, for staff, for example, if you come late on your election day without just cause, it's a criminal offense. Should you penalize or criminalize failure of individuals who have offered services to the commission? Should you penalize them? Should it become a criminal offense? Will people run away, or will they be more serious? I really don't know the answer to that. Some people have said a logistics company, why don't you give some courier companies and logistics company? Some of those people are private people. Some are owned by politicians. You have issues with those. And if they don't perform, what do you do? You know, it's just you can sue for damages, but the damage is done.
Neutrality. Because if you are giving
there are issues of neutrality there as well. That is there. You saw in Lagos, for example, and where one of the, I think the factional leaders of the Road Transport Workers Union, who's particularly known with one as a political leader, and the controversy that's aroused.
Some persons actually went to court to make sure that it's not part of the exercise.
That is correct, yes. So there are challenges. I don't know. I don't have all the solutions, but it's a conversation we must have, and solutions preferred. Maybe it may work if you say, look, you cannot just appeal to their sense of patriotism, that this is a patriotic call, even though you are being rewarded. But if you don't do, if you fail, and you have no justified reason for coming late or for failure, then perhaps you should face some kind of penal sanction, perhaps.
How about building camps close to the wards, where the materials, can be kept, so that on that day, the movement will not be too cumbersome? Sounds
like a good idea, but you're talking of debt profiles and stuff like that just now before we came on. Now you are talking about more expenditure. But there is a better way. It's a good suggestion, but there is a better way, and it's already being practiced. You do have RACs, restaurant area camps already, and these are public schools generally, which INEC takes over on the night, on the eve of the election. They wire it, furnish it, and ensure that, when I say furnish, I mean provide beddings and stuff like that, beds, mattresses for people to sleep. And before, they used to devolve from the local government office of the commission, but now you go from those camps, which are nearer the units. So that is already in place and is being used. But some of them, polling units are walking distance from those camps, but some are still further away, so you will still need transport. And don't forget that they have to carry the materials as well. They have to take the beavers, they have to take the shed, they have to take sometimes different election materials. So even though you might be walking distance, sometimes because of the load you have to take, you may need some kind of transportation. Okay, let's go back to Benin, where Wilson has some questions for you, Barrister.
So much, Kadri. Well, the question I really have to ask, do we have a guest in the studio, is an APC chieftain. You want to maybe have another view and opinion about the death profile of Okoro Sahobari. We'll get back to you shortly. Thank you, sir. The question now is this: who is the REC answerable to? From what Barrister said, he said he's not a staff. So who is he answerable to? That was a question I really want to ask.
Thank you. I'm sorry the audio is not so clear, but I guess you're asking who the REC is answerable to?
Yes.
Well, I thought I answered that. The electoral, when you say answerable, we'll probably have to explain that. The Electoral Act says the REC is answerable to the Commission. And that's why the Commission called him, and because, as I said, he has delegated authority, that authority has been withdrawn. The delegated authority has been withdrawn. He's supposed to be answerable to the Commission. But the Commission does not and has no powers to discipline him. But to take instructions to discharge his duties, he's answerable to the Commission. That's why the Commission took the stand it took. Because you're in law answerable to me, but I have appointed a returning officer. You have no right to usurp his powers, take over his functions without reference to me and without reference to the law. So you did not come and explain. Maybe you had some compelling reasons. So they invited him to Abuja, invited the returning officer to hear all the parties on the side. And when they heard that, they took the decision they took. But he's in law answerable to the Commission. That is why some people are calling for reforms, and maybe the Commission should appoint resident electoral commissioners. Some people say do away with the office of resident electoral commissioner. Others say maybe appoint career officers and staff of the Commission, in which case they're not only answerable to you, they are subject to your discipline. You appoint them. So there are 2-3 options available going forward. But to answer your question directly, he's answerable to the Commission, but the Commission cannot discipline him.
Thank you so much, Barrister, for throwing light to this particular discourse. we appreciate your wonderful analysis. Well, Kadri, I'd like you to sum it all up.
I will just say thank you so much to the former INEC Director on Voter Education and Publicity, Barrister Oluwole Osaze-Uzi. Thank you so much. You've really enlightened the general public.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.